Shaped by the staggering force of massive glaciers millions of years ago, Alaska's Inside Passage boasts wildlife-filled fjords and lush island scenery. Habitat for bald eagles, sea lions, porpoises, and whales. Its mountains are carpeted with majestic forests. Inside Passage, Alaska is home to Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian Indians whose history is reflected in towering totem poles. Russian settlers left a legacy of onion-domed churches gleaming with icons. Traveling in Alaska is like traveling no other place on Earth. There are 586,000 square miles here and almost that many possibilities. You can choose from wildlife viewing, kayaking, and guided glacier hikes. Imagine your vacation in Alaska for one moment. Your delight when you spot a grizzly bear catching a fish in a flowing stream. That instant when the silence of a misty fjord is shattered by a pod of giant orcas. While your float plane flies over crystal glaciers and beautiful lakes. This is Alaska. This is real. This is the adventure of a lifetime. The so-called first city of Ketchikan is usually the first Alaskan port for northbound ships and was established in 1887 when a salmon cannery was built at the mouth of Ketchikan Creek. Today, fishermen and loggers still contribute to a colorful atmosphere around the waterfront. As a travel destination, Ketchikan, Alaska means different things to different people. Some people enjoy Ketchikan, Alaska fishing. Others come to explore Ketchikan's Native American culture. Saxman Native Village is the world's largest collection of standing totem poles. Here you can experience the rich culture of the Southeast Alaska's Native Americans. Totem poles are throughout all of Alaska. The name of totem poles comes from totem, the symbol of a Northwest North America Native clan. When Westerners first saw totem poles, they thought they were religious symbols and objects of worship. Mistakenly, early missionaries told their converts to burn their totem poles. Today, we understand the totem poles are more like billboards, signposts, or tombstones, telling stories and honoring heritage. During the summer months, the town bustles with visitors from all over the world. The rustic boardwalk on Creek Street preserves a distinct historic feel. You've probably seen pictures of this area of Ketchikan, Alaska, with colorful buildings raised on pylons and salmon swimming in the creek below. The salmon aren't the only things that have gone up this river to spawn. Creek Street was once Alaska's most notorious red light area. Reportedly, 2/3 of miners' wages went to its bars and bordellos. Dolly's was one of the infamous brothels. Miners, fishermen, loggers, and townspeople gathered to carouse, drink, and visit the clapboard bordellos built along the boardwalk. Dolly's still stands today as a museum to that bygone era. Creek Street is also famous for the population of salmon. The abundance of salmon that migrate from the ocean around Prince of Wales Island and into the protected waters of the Inside Passage. Many salmon swim back upstream to where they were born to spawn. In fact, it was for this reason that Tlingit natives selected Ketchikan Creek as their summer fish camp, and why the town was established in 1900 as a commercial fishing port. Because of the abundance of fish and the construction of salmon canneries, Ketchikan is known as the salmon capital of the world. Fishing is a larger part of the economy here in Ketchikan. Visitors to the southeastern port can get a tour of the fishing vessel Sea Star, which appeared on the first season of the Discovery Channel's Deadliest Catch. Set out with the fishing vessel Aleutian Ballad in the calm, protected waters of southeast Alaska. Visitors will get as close as they will ever likely to get to the Alaskan crab fishing industry, allowing you to brush up against the real experience.
It's pokey. Be careful.
See and touch the amazing creatures that live in the frigid Alaskan waters. The ship has been modified for visitors' comfort, enjoyment, and safety in mind. The action is so close that you will see water dripping from 700-pound king crab pots as they land. Be prepared with your camera, as king and snow crab, octopus, prawns, and eels, just to name a few, are set on deck just a few feet away from you. The animals are placed in a live tank before being released back into the wild. This is an extraordinary experience of life aboard a beautiful working boat. What you'll take home is an Alaskan adventure so real, the memories will last a lifetime. Flight-seeing seaplanes fill the waters and the skies of Ketchikan. Seaplanes are a great way to catch an aerial view of the Misty Fjords. Discover Misty Fjords National Monument. The nation's second largest wilderness region spans more than 2 million acres of sheer granite cliffs, 1,000-foot waterfalls, beautiful valleys, and serene crystalline lakes. Misty Fjords is one of our country's greatest national treasures, and visitors can access it only by boat or float plane. On the Promek Misty Fjords Tour, you will board one of their float planes, soar along the Ketchikan waterfront, and begin your journey to this enchanted monument. Midway through the flight, your pilot will land in a pristine lake or saltwater inlet, where you step out of the plane onto the floats to absorb the incredible scenery, serenity, and sweeping silence. Eagles, bears, mountain goats, whales, and sea lions are some of the wildlife you may observe on your trip. The specially equipped float planes offer all the amenities to make your trip a memorable experience. Passengers use individual headsets to listen to the pilot's narration and complimenting music. With a flight-seeing trip, the sky is the limit. Ketchikan is the state's 4th largest city and is a strong contender for the nation's wettest. Annual precipitation averages 165 inches. The tourist board shrugs it off as liquid sunshine, and indeed Ketchikan's perennial drizzle and sporadic showers won't spoil your visit. Rain or shine, Ketchikan has something to offer for everyone. Called America's most scenic state capital, Juneau is surrounded by intercoastal waterways, lush rainforests, rugged mountainsides, and awe-inspiring accessible glaciers. Alaska's capital city is a unique mix of fishermen, legislators, homemakers, union workers, native elders, and many others. Almost 31,000 people live in Juneau. The city is only accessible by air or sea. During the summer months, cruise ships deliver over 1.5 million guests to experience all that Juneau has to offer. At Marine Park, bronze statues pay homage to early hard rock miners and to Patsy Ann, a bull terrier who would rush to meet the fortune seekers as they arrived via steamships. The Tlingit and Haida Indians were the first settlers to our area. Native Alaska influence is prominent today in Juneau. The downtown area is served by tramway up Mount Roberts, where wilderness is instantly accessible. The Mount Roberts tramway boards at the base of Juneau's Mount Roberts. The Raven and Eagle trams cars run every 6 minutes and provide an amazing perspective of the city of Juneau. The outstanding views offered include Douglas and Admiralty Islands, Gastineau Channel, and the Chilkat Mountains. From the mountain station, 1,800 feet up the mountain, there is so much to explore. follow the hiking trails and discover traditional live tree carvings. Using ancient native carving techniques, tribes were able to mark their lands without killing the trees. Gaze upon the land where Chief Cowie led Richard Harris and Joe Juneau to discover gold in 1880. Juneau is home to the Mendenhall Glacier, one of Alaska's few drive-up glaciers. This glacier ice stretches 12 miles from Juneau Icefield to Mendenhall Lake. There are many ways to experience the Mendenhall Glacier. The United States Forest Service maintains a series of trails to explore around the glacier. For the more adventurous, try a helicopter glacier trek. Board a North Star helicopter to take a flight and land on the glacier. On the way, you will witness the landscape change from the lush forest at sea level to the granite peaks of the surrounding glaciers. During the flight, the pilot will give you an insight into the formation of the glacier and the unique environment that surrounds it.
We've got 38 different named glaciers, and the only one that's, I don't know if it's still advancing, but it's relatively static in its size, is the Taku. The rest of them are all getting a little shorter. And further up on the glacier, it actually, the snow will stay there year-round. The little bit of rain that we're getting today is just that. It's just a little bit. Usually we get a lot more. Down in the valley here, we actually are considered a temperate rainforest. As that rain comes on up, the valley actually cools and starts coming down in the form of snow. Basically, the equation is an inch of rain down low equals a foot of snow up high. So we get over 100 inches of rain a year down in the valley, and we get over 100 feet of snow up in the ice field. This glacier is about 12 miles long from the top of the north branch, about 10 from the top of the south branch. And right about here, it's about a mile wide. Where you guys are going to be standing here, there's about 1,100 feet of ice below you. And we will start our descent on in.
After you land on the glacier to begin the trek, outfitted in mountaineering gear, a trained guide will escort you on this out-of-this-world experience.
What happens is the water starts to find weak spots in the ice, it cools, and it creates a hole. It mills down, creates a hole, and bursts through, and you get these wormholes throughout the glacier. So if we were to cut the glacier in half, it would actually look like Swiss cheese because of all the plumbing that has occurred throughout it. Think about how fast the glacier is moving downwards, how fast this is moving, and how much this is kind of stunted and, things like that. So chunks open up and close. A lot of these actual fracture lines you see right here, these are all old crevasses. Right. Yeah, so it's, I don't know if it's in their destiny or their cards to open up again. We'll find out.
Juneau offers experiences for which Alaska is legendary. Skagway, with a winter population of just over 800 and a summer population that hits several thousand when 4 or 5 cruise ships are in port, lies at the northernmost section of Lynn Canal. Walking along the boardwalks of Skagway is like stepping back in time. Historic Skagway saw tens of thousands of fortune-seeking prospectors during the Klondike Gold Rush of 1898. The prospectors piled off of steamships, eager to head over the rough wilderness to the Yukon goldfields on the White Pass Trail. Before the lonely men could leave town, they faced temptations of the 80 saloons and the lure of painted ladies. The Red Onion Saloon was Skagway's most exclusive bordello. Built in 1898, the saloon served alcohol on the first floor, while the second floor satisfied more than the prospectors' thirst.
The way you would choose your girl here at the Red Onion, you would walk up to the bartender, get yourself a shot of liquid courage, and looking up behind the bartender, you would see a row of 10 dolls. Each of those dolls was made to look exactly like the living doll upstairs, with her hair color, her eye color, whatever color dress she was or perhaps wasn't wearing.
Skagway was a dangerous, lawless place in 1898. Many didn't survive their migration to Skagway. The Gold Rush Cemetery is just a few miles outside of downtown Skagway in a peaceful spot surrounded by a white picket fence and tall evergreens. It is a stop included in most guided tours and is the last resting place for Gold Rush-era townsfolk and prospectors. Its most famous residents are local bad guy Jefferson Soapy Smith and town hero Frank Reed. The White Pass and Yukon Route Railway take guests up to White Pass with all the comforts of a vintage passenger coach. Built in 1898 during the Klondike Gold Rush, this narrow-gauge railroad is an international historic civil engineering landmark, a designation shared with the Panama Canal, the Eiffel Tower, and the Statue of Liberty. The train climbs nearly 3,000 feet in just 20 miles and features steep grades of up to 3.9%, cliff-hanging turns of 16 degrees, 2 tunnels, and numerous bridges and trestles. Experience the breathtaking panorama of mountains, glaciers, gorges, waterfalls, tunnels, trestles, and historic sites from the comfort of our vintage passenger coaches. Haines, a peaceful, quiet town that invites all to come and stay for a while, rests on the shores of a beautiful fjord surrounded by snow-capped mountains. The town has some 2,500 year-round residents that create one of the most unique places in Alaska. In 1903, the U.S. Army chose these grounds to construct its first permanent outpost in the Alaskan Territory. Fort William H. Seward was named after the U.S. Secretary of State who arranged the Alaska Purchase from Russia. When the fort was decommissioned in 1947, it was bought by a group wanting to create an arts community. Today, the fort plays host to numerous art galleries and restaurants. Formal officers' quarters have been converted to beautiful inns. Haines has attracted some amazing personalities. For a taste of what working life in a salmon cannery was like, stop by the Sir Q Canning Museum. This is the home of the last working canning line in the world. Our tour guide Sam McFeeters tells a little about this fully restored canning line.
Okay, so this is a half-pound canning line set up by Jim Szymanski. Jim and Randa Szymanski are locals here in town. Jim has fished in Alaskan waters for over 30 years. He loves fishing, and what he loves most about fishing is that he can sell to a cannery and then go offload and watch his fish being processed in a cannery. He loves it so much that about 10 years ago he decided he wanted his own cannery. When the machines arrived, he put them in this order, turned them all on, not one of them worked. Jim spent the next 18 months going through each machine, tearing them down to the nuts and bolts, built them back up into working order, with the exception of one thing. He slowed every machine down to 1/10 the actual speed so you could see things take place and see things happen. First machine here was invented in 1904 by American Can. And before it was invented, it was up to the cannery workers to hand make the cans. So they'd hand cut out the can bodies, hand solder them, hand cut out the tops and the bottoms, hand fill them, hand seal them. A good can maker could make about 10 cans an hour. That doesn't tell you what a bad can maker could do. So when these were invented in 1904, they would make cans at a rate of 2 cans per second. It revolutionized the canning industry. And how it happened were the canneries were shipped these flattened can bodies. These were machine stamped, machine soldered, and shipped out to the canneries in boxes that the canneries could then reuse to ship back full cases of salmon. This is how they made cans from 1904 until 1982. In fact, this was the only way to make cans until 1982. In 1982, everything changed. In 1982, there was a gentleman from Belgium who opened up a can of Alaskan pink salmon. He ate the salmon and he died. It's not good to kill off your customers. In 1982, the salmon industry crashed due to prices. So in the off-season of 1982, American Can came out with what's called a punch can. And this is a can that's punched out of a single piece of metal. There's no seams on the base, there's no seams on the side. There's an epoxy coating on the outside, epoxy coating on the inside. Fish goes in, one seal is made on top, and that salmon is as good as or as safe as it can possibly be. The cans themselves were tapered just enough so they could be nestled inside each other and sent out to the canneries to minimize space. But American Can still had a problem. They had been renting all these machines to the canneries for about $100 a season and then selling them the tin for a lot more. What American Can decided to do was to go out into the field and destroy these machines. Tear them down, sell them for scrap, just get rid of them. All except these three right here. This is the last known three-piece canning line anywhere in the world, and we've got it right here in Podunk, Haines, Alaska.
The Sheldon Museum and Cultural Center is nationally recognized for its collection of historical artifacts.
It's a very nice museum. It tells the history of the area. If they're interested in finding out about Haines, this is the place to come. We have written monographs that give more in-depth information than we can do with the exhibits. We have some very nice exhibits that represent the local native group, the Tlinkits. We have information about Fort Seward, that was an Army base from 1904 until right after World War II, very active. The gold rush came through here, it bypassed us in the beginning, but it didn't take very long for the miners to find out that there was gold in this area as well, so we were part of the gold rush.
Certainly one of the most unconventional museums is the Hammer Museum.
Well, the Hammer Museum represents about 35 years of a bad habit of mine, you might say, although we've had the museum here now for 6 years. We claim to be the only museum exclusively dedicated to hammers, although there are, quite a few other tool museums. We're the only museum dedicated to hammers. So I started collecting hammers actually to use. When I first came to Alaska, I wanted to be a self-sufficient pioneer and make everything myself. I started blacksmithing and making my own tools and hardware. And one thing led to another. Friends started bringing me hammer heads and I would put handles on them, and eventually I had over 150 hammers to use myself. We have 1,700 hammers on display here now, and a little short on room, otherwise we'd have a couple hundred more than we do. But of course my mission is to preserve the history of the hammer and to share it with our visitors. Well, usually they say, "Oh, wow," is the first thing out of their mouth, and then they never realized there were so many different types of hammers. And of course, that's why we're here, is to open their eyes to the many different types of hammers that were used. And of course, so many of these hammers represent trades that have pretty well vanished, and that's, of course, why people don't recognize them as everyday hammer. Well, some of the most unique and my favorite hammers relate to some of the older trades that have gone by the way here. And just for a few examples here, the paving hammers here behind me were used for making cobblestone roads. And of course, we don't see too much of that done anymore. Okay, the banker would use a hammer to cancel checks with in the late 1800s. And so here we have the banker's hammer, and also a check from May 10th, 1884. And you can see where it's been cut with a similar hammer to cancel the check. We think maybe this is where the term cutting a check came from. See, the story on the wagon pin hammers was when the settlers went west, they had their wagons full, so they combined the function of a hammer with the hitch pin that connected the horses to the wagon. And you can see where many of these have been bent or worn from being used as a hitch pin. Another one of my favorites behind you here, it's the bill poster's hammer. Now, the bill poster was the guy that would put the advertisements up on the sides of barns and buildings. So rather than carrying a ladder, he had a hammer that screwed together in sections. When he wanted to put a poster up, he would start by placing a tack into this clip, and he'd stick the poster onto the tack. Then he could just reach up and drive it into the building, and it would be held, the poster would be held by the one tack, and then all the rest of the tacks would make use of this magnetic head to drive the tacks into the poster. These are all patented hammers here, and of course, to get a patent, you have to have a unique feature that you're trying to protect. You might want to sell your idea. And there's several different types of patents. There's the design patent, which is basically an ornamental patent or something for looks. Here's an example of the Billy Goat hammer, which was packaged in laundry soap in the late 20s. Billy Boy soap. And then a utility patent is a patent that serves a purpose or a function. Here's an example of a utility patent. The inventor of this hammer says you point the pointy end, you jab into a post, and you thread it in to make it nice and tight, and then you tie your horse to it, was the whole idea here. We're not sure why he didn't just tie his horse to the post, but he wouldn't have sold many hammers at that rate. So. Case here we have quite a variety. We have hammers for breaking sugar. Before sugar was granulated, the hammer was used to break off the desired piece of sugar. We have nut hammers, candy hammers, or hammers for breaking candy. And then we have a variety of hammers for musical instruments. There's hammers for playing the dulcimer, for tuning the tabla, for brass horn repair, for piano tuning. We also have in the case what I call lodge hammers. There's hammers for calling meetings to order, and hammers from the Masons and the Odd Fellows and the 4-H Club, various organizations. At this end of the case, we have what we call drink hammers or applause hammers. These were used in popular clubs back in the 20s and 30s, and people would tap their glass for applause when the band was done playing. We have several from the Cotton Club and the Ziegfeld Frolic, along with the Topless Tomboy Club. The sculptures were donated to us by the Smithsonian Institution. They were used at the American History Museum there in the late 60s and 70s. They spent the last 25 years in a storage room, and they were donated to us in 2002, and they really helped liven up the Hammer Museum here. Well, originally all the hammers were collected here in Alaska, the first couple hundred, and then since then our family vacations have always been big hammer hunting trips. And since then we also have a lot of hammers donated. And then last year I did wind up buying a collection from another hammer collector. So they come from all different areas. Well, I want them to take home a little piece of history, and I want them to have a unique experience. And we hope to always provide at least those two things, and we want them to leave happy.
If you want to get more adventurous in the outdoors, try a flatbed riverboat tour. The views are breathtaking. Enjoy the mirror-like reflecting water. Keep your eyes open. You never know what you're going to spot along the way. For a slow-paced journey on the water, try a kayaking tour. Experience the peacefulness of nature with only the sounds of the water splashing as you gently paddle through the Alaskan wilderness. The quiet is only interrupted by the cry of an eagle. For an up-close and personal experience of a lifetime, take a trip out to Corshell Films Wildlife Center. Steve Corshell, a filmmaker, has spent a lifetime training animals for use in films. When you arrive, you will meet Steve and his colleague Mario, who will introduce you to wildlife in only a way that they can.
Since I was a small child growing up in northern Minnesota, I've been around nature. And yet, when I started to go to school, I realized a lot of my school friends were not having that same experience. So I tried to bring little animals for show and tell. And that's when I discovered that there is quite a reward in seeing people smile, seeing people become enlightened about nature. That's tagged on to that show and tell. So I've just parlayed it into a life's work.
And they'll actually stop a multi-million-dollar logging operation if there's a nest around. It's the northern goshawk.
Yeah, this is a traditional bird of falconry, the goshawk, and in fact in medieval times this bird was considered the knight's hawk, because if you had a trained goshawk you could feed yourself with it. You can never pick up the eyas. They know that they're vulnerable and they have to stay in their nest, and so you can pick up the nest, but you can't pick up the bird out of the nest or they really protest. It scares them really badly. It's hardwired. The instinct is that I'm about 75 feet up in a tree and I've got to hang on to this nest for God's sakes, and you hang on to the nest no matter what happens with the nest. The little bird hangs on, and it's important actually to have branches in there for him to hang on to. I became a falconer very young, and I also saw the power that wildlife has over people, you know, and the fact that people are drawn to it, and there's an energy that you derive from wild animals, and it's truly remarkable to see how it affects people. And I saw that as a young kid, and I've been pursuing that my entire life.
This coyote today is in a special mood, so I'm going to need your help. On the count of 3, let's all howl and see if it'll live up to its name as the song dog. On the count of 3. I don't know if this will work, but let's try it. 1, 2, 3.
Well, this animal is actually doing quite well here, but not everywhere it's found. In fact, this creature is an indicator species, and the mink's niche or occupation is it's a beachcomber. They don't live really in the water and they don't live on dry land. They actually just live on the edge of water, and they're looking for aquatic animals they can find there to eat. Fish, ducks' eggs, ducks, of course frogs, any little animal they can come up with, they'll dine on.
The wolves eat, how much do they eat, Mario?
Wolves on average eat about 6 pounds of meat per day, and their jaws are cantilevered. Cantilever jaw, you would think way out in the tip there, they're able to leverage 1,200 pounds, and that is extraordinary.
And this moose calf is 14 days old now. Mommy was, had a misfortunate experience up in Anchorage, and so the calf was brought here. We raised moose, and she'll have about 20 acres of pasture for shortly. It's a little over 2 weeks old, and you might wonder what a moose looks like in size a year later. Well, we have another one over here that came out of the swamp. Her name is Blueberry. Let's take a look. There's nothing more friendly than a female moose that's bonded to you because of bananas. But actually she has a 16-acre swamp, and that's just one of them. We got to move them around. They eat, their diets are so complex. Loyal, there was a forest ranger that actually raised a female moose in eastern Quebec, and then he was assigned somewhere else for 2 years. And when he came back, this female moose he had to release back into the wild. He came back 2 years later, and he was on a canoe on a lake and singing a song, and the moose remembered this guy's voice, and she came to the edge of the lake. Now she's fully grown, saw him in the canoe, and she jumped in the lake, swam out to him, and tried to climb in the canoe with him, and almost drowned him. Testament to how does a moose show affection to a human being.
This is Rocky, the northern flying squirrel, and he doesn't like to come out in the midday sun. This is a strictly nocturnal animal, and he sleeps all day. But if I give him a special treat, he'll tolerate us and come out and let us look at him.
Miracle of nature, and these forests here in southeast Alaska may not be the way they are if it wasn't for this creature's existence here.
And he's got this little flat tail.
Be careful now. Don't push
It's
your luck,
It's
Mario.
wide. But it's thin this way. It's real thin. And if you look at it this way, it's flat. And it acts like a rudder while he's flying.
Oh,
Darting
cute, cute.
quills.
Oh, hold it up again with his little paws.
You should have seen. Now, of course, porcupines cannot shoot their quills, and many people believe they can.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we feed this guy here. He's kind of a glutton, he is. Now you'll notice their antlers are growing right now. They're in the velvet, and actually antlers grow from the outside in, unlike horns, which grow from the inside out. And this velvet, if you're to feel it right now, if you're actually able to touch the antlers, it's just coursing with blood, and it's very, very warm. The blood is right on the surface. They have feeling in it, though, right now, and they don't really like for you to touch it. But, yeah, the little calf's starting to grow its antlers, too. Oh, that was nice. You see birds right in my ears.
Many people who live in Alaska their whole life have never seen a pine marten, but they got a delightful fox-like face and related to the wolverine. And look at, we could probably see a little bit of its neck, its throat pattern there. How orange it is. Uh-oh, there goes the jar, Garrett. This creative training of this special animal, and Garrett test and see if it's, come on, looks pretty good. Will it follow you, Garrett? Let's try it. I don't know if this will work, but
Race now.
get your eyes trained here. Oh!
This vast wilderness you see here is the last stronghold of the pine marten, which is an arboreal weasel, a weasel that lives in trees. They hunt squirrels, birds, they're looking for birds' eggs, of course, and this animal actually lives in trees to such an extent that it will find a woodpecker's nest, take it over, and that's where it has its young.
Martens, they have a sweet tooth, and they love wild Alaskan berries. Lynx coming up, and we have a number of lynx, and this one here was taking a nap back here in the shade. And I'm going to carry him down. Now, this lynx has all of his teeth and claws, and we have to read the frequencies of these wild animals. I'm just going to bring you a little closer to this animal. I talk to it. You can see its feet. Now, I'm going to try to bring out one of its claws so you can see they have all their claws. And this lynx, if it was in the wrong mood or I was trying to force, could actually give me a good swat on the face and I'd never look the same. So it's always a dance around the wild nature of many of these animals. Each day we take nothing for granted. They are not pets. They're wild animals that are giving us a glimpse into their secret life in the wild of the bush here.
The impact that for them to see these animals, it's written on their face, it can't be faked. We have ladies and men at the end of the tour, they're actually wiping tears away and trembling and hugging us, and my gosh, I mean, that's invaluable.
Yeah,
to us.
it's priceless. In fact, that's what we never got out of producing films. You know, we've shot all these films, and you give it to a broadcaster or someone, and you don't ever see the actual impact.
But a
it
film
has.
can't do that as well either as the live animal.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
One of the main attractions of Alaska is the abundance of wildlife. This state is the residence for some of the most majestic creatures. A popular tour is Alaska bear viewing at Annan Creek Bear Observatory, located in the Bradfield Canal of southeast Alaska. Home to both resident grizzlies and black bears, it is one of the few areas in North America where it is possible to see these animals together on the same stream. The black bear will give way to his cousin, the brown bear, without hesitation. During the main salmon spawning run, the brown bears move upstream and yield the lower portion of the stream to some 30 resident black bears. The best viewing time is May through September. If you prefer to set off to sea, you might be able to spot several species of whales. The nutrient-rich waters of the Inside Passage near Juneau offers some of the best whale and wildlife habitat in all of Alaska. Allen Marine Tour operators have custom-designed catamarans to provide the perfect stable platform for viewing, photography, and learning about the area's wildlife. Humpback whale feed on the fish that live in these Alaskan waters during the summer months before migrating to the warmer southern waters of Hawaii or Mexico in the winter to breed. Humpbacks are not the only whales in Alaska. The swift and powerful orca is without a doubt the king of the seas. The beautiful black and white whales have been feared and revered by native peoples for thousands of years. Resident killer whales are the most commonly sighted. Although named resident, it is not because they remain in one area. It is because they frequent certain areas consistently. They are nomadic, just as the transient and offshore killer whales, but have a much smaller range. Resident killer whales live in very complex and cohesive family groups known as pods. The resident killer whale's favorite food is salmon, so they frequent areas where the salmon are abundant. They are always on the move, sometimes traveling as much as 100 miles in a day, but may be seen in a general area for a month or more and then not seen again for weeks. As the salmon go, so goes the resident killer whale. Another inhabitant of the ocean is the sea otter. The waters around Sitka play host to these small, furry creatures. Paul Voigt, a wildlife guide for Allen Marine, provides guests with educational descriptions of these animals.
A lot of what I do is take people out to tell them about our wonderful wildlife around here. We do have great opportunity to see sea otters in Sitka, far more than most other ports. They are quite abundant in many areas of Sitka Sound. The sea otter has a 20 to 25 year life expectancy, and quite often those sea otters are in the local area for most of their lives and get quite used to our vessels. So as a rule, they usually will give us a pretty good visit, and we have an opportunity to see them pretty up close and personal, probably better than one would have an opportunity to see sea otters in a zoo. Here you're seeing them in their natural habitat.
The bald eagle, which populates Alaska's waterways, is one of the state's most striking. Eagles feed mainly on fish, but waterfowl and small mammals supplement their diet, especially when fish are in short supply. Eagles can fly up to 30 miles an hour and can dive at speeds up to 100 miles per hour. Their keen eyesight allows them to spot fish at distances of up to 1 mile. The eagle has long been valued for its striking beauty and is a symbol of national pride. However, in 1917, claims by farmers and fishermen of the damaging effect of bald eagle scavenging in the natural environment prompted the Alaska Territorial Legislature to impose a bounty on these beautiful creatures. Though the claims were found to be largely false, the bounty system was responsible for the killing of over 100,000 eagles before it was removed in 1953. When Alaska became a state in 1959, the bald eagle in Alaska came under federal protection as part of the Bald Eagle Protection Act of 1940. This act made it illegal to kill or possess an eagle, alive or dead, or to possess any parts of an eagle, including feathers. While bald eagles were endangered or completely eliminated in the lower 48 states, their numbers are recovering due to careful conservation efforts. Bald eagles mate for life. Nests are common along the shoreline but are difficult to see. Eagles lay from 1 to 3 eggs, commonly 2. The eggs usually hatch between late May and early June after a 34 to 35 day incubation period. The young usually leave the nest by early September. Only the adults have the white heads and tails. Until they are 4 or 5 years old, these eagles are solid brown and white and are often mistaken for golden eagles. The majestic eagle is a beauty to see flying the crisp Alaskan sky. As the ship sails in, you will marvel at the amazing size and beauty of Hubbard Glacier. It is the longest tidewater glacier in Alaska, extending 76 miles from its source on Mount Logan in the Yukon. The cliff face you sail along is over 6 miles wide, 300 to 400 feet from the top to sea level, and 300 feet from sea level to the bottom. As Hubbard is advancing, it creaks and groans as it moves, and is a very actively calving glacier. This makes for some exciting moments when the huge chunks of ice crash into the bay, creating a wonderful sound called White Thunder by the Tlingit people. Icy Strait Point is the newest cruise destination in Alaska. Decades ago, Icy Strait Point was one of the world's most productive salmon canneries. Today, it celebrates its canning past. Beautifully restored, the Icy Strait Point Cannery reopened in 2004. Its halls are filled with unique family-owned shops, a museum, and a mid-1930s cannery line display. The weather in Alaska can be rain or shine, but don't let that dampen your experience. As a Tlingit tradition, every visitor is given a cedar chip. The tradition follows that you rub the chip in your hand so that you leave your oil on the chip. The chip is placed in the fire so that a piece of you stays here in Icy Strait Point. For an adventurous tour, take the ATV tour through the bush. A guide takes you on this bumpy ride to explore old logging roads. See amazing sights such as the Avenue of the Alderwood. Your guide will stop along the way to give you some insight into the native Alaskans' use of nature.
This is this type of tree. This is called alder trees. Okay. This is what we use in our smokehouses. Most everybody in town has their own smokehouse. If we don't pickle it or vacuum seal it or fresh pack like coho, we'll smoke it. We smoke a lot of our foods. These sprout up like weeds on the old abandoned logging road. This is an old logging road, but it's a good weed, so it gives our food a very, very good flavor.
"1,300 feet up into the wilderness lurks the wildest ride. Get yourself strapped in for the world's longest zip line. Make sure you open your eyes so you don't miss any of the magnificent scenery." Sitka is settled on Baranof Island, located on the outer coast of Alaska's Inside Passage. Like many Southeast Alaska communities, Sitka is accessible only by air and by sea. Sitka combines a treasury of native culture, Russian history, and Alaskan wilderness. As you take a short walk around the town, you will come across many sites that recall the city's past. The Russian influence is undeniable in Sitka. Alexander Baranov and the Russian-American Fur Company thrived here. The natives tried to drive the Russians out by attacking their outpost in 1802. Baranov retaliated 2 years later and defeated the natives. The settlement was renamed New Archangel. Russian Orthodox clergy soon took up residence. By the mid-century, overhunting had diminished the number of sea otters and therefore the Russians' interest in the New World. In 1867, the Russians sold Alaska to the United States for $7.2 million with a ceremony that took place in Sitka. St. Michael's Cathedral is a national landmark located right in the heart of Sitka. The present building is a reconstruction of the original, which was destroyed by fire in 1966. Fortunately, nearly all of the icons were saved from the fire and are displayed in this new building. The Russian Bishop's House, the oldest intact Russian building in Sitka, was built in 1842 by the Russian-American Company as a residence for the Bishop of the Orthodox Church. The National Park Service manages the building and grounds. It has been restored to the 1850s historic period when it functioned as a school, bishop's residence, and a chapel. The Sitka Pioneers' Home was built in 1934 on the old Russian parade grounds. This is a state home for elderly Alaskans. One of the most popular tourist attractions in Sitka is the famous Prospector statue, which serves as the centerpiece of the grounds of the Sitka Pioneer Home. Officially entitled The Prospector, the statue was sculpted by the late Alonzo Victor Lewis. Records show that the sculpture was supposed to be modeled after real-life pioneer William Skagway Bill Fonda. Alaska Raptor Center is a must-see in Sitka. A pioneering wildlife project, the Raptor Center has for years proven that dedicated volunteer effort and innovative veterinary medicine can make a life-or-death difference on Alaska's raptors or birds of prey. The center's goal is to release into the wild all rehabilitated birds. However, a few never recover flight and remain housed at the center's outdoor display. A stop in Sitka is not complete without a trip to Sitka National Historical Park. This scenic 107-acre park preserves and interprets the site of a Tlingit Indian fort and the battle fought between the Russians and the Tlingits in 1804. A fine collection of Haida and Tlingit totem poles were moved there from the Louisiana Exposition in St. Louis in 1904. The museum contains an exhibit of Tlingit and Russian artifacts. The main building houses authentic original totems, a fine indoor museum artifact display, and an active Tlingit arts program studio where the public can watch and talk to local Alaskan Native Indian artists. For almost 40 years, the New Archangel Dancers have helped keep Sitka's Russian heritage alive through authentic folk dances. The New Archangel Dancers are a group of about 35 women who live, work, and raise their families in Sitka. Troop members represent a variety of professions, including artists, biologists, business managers, pharmacists, social workers, and teachers. One of the performers, Angela McGraw, tells of why there are no males in the group.
Well, when the group was started back in 1969, the men were invited to join. They were told, we'll learn some new dances, meet some new people, and have some fun. Their response at the time was, no thank you. We don't live in Alaska to dance in our spare time. Besides, they said, you probably never get that group off the ground anyway. Well, with those wonderful words of encouragement, being strong women, our founding mothers went right on without them. In the past 38 years, we have learned some new dances. We meet fantastic people every single day, and as you might be able to tell, we have a lot of fun. So now, once in a while, we do get a man to ask to join our group, and it's our turn to say, no thank you. We really couldn't do this without the men in our lives, but we have found that they are great at staying home and taking care of the kids and the house so we can dance.
auditions every year in the fall, and through auditions it determines your strengths and abilities as a girl dancer or a boy dancer. So the girls are, if they have the agility to do spins and other types of turns, then that determines which role you'll participate in within the group.
The possibilities in Alaska are endless. A cruise through the Inside Passage is a great way to get a taste of Alaska. Experience the people. Take a hike on a strange new planet. View with your own eyes the most dramatic scenery. The most abundant marine life and wildlife in the world on your Alaska cruise. Enjoy traveling through one of America's great frontiers.